there, I'm Megan, a movement instructor and an RMT, and today we're going to go over a little bit of simple self-care using a bouncy ball for some self-massage in the forearms. For many people, whether it's your weightlifting or you're holding your kids or you're doing a ton of typing or maybe you have a previous injury at the wrist, the forearms are muscles that they can get really tight and it can be hard to release them. Often in my massage therapy practice, the arms are the things that we tend to neglect the most. People are more focused on maybe neck and shoulder, low back, and in part that's because I specialize in postural pain, but a lot of what I see is office workers who will often say if we do get into the arms, man, I didn't notice how sore I was or the tension that I was carrying in there. So this is a great little routine we can do using our bouncy ball. And what we want to focus on is when we're looking at the arm, coming from the back of the elbow. So if we're looking at the back of the arm, palms face down, our forearm muscles come out kind of this way, and the bulk of the muscle is in this top third, top half of our forearm with the tendons coming down to the hand. So we're going to focus more on this cuff part of our arm. So these are our extensor muscles on the back of the hand. They're responsible for coming into extension. So this is them contracting and shortening. To stretch our extensors, what we would want to do is keep this elbow nice and straight, point fingertips down towards the floor, and then maybe add a little overpressure to get a stretch through here. So let's start here, just stretching it out a little bit. Noticing how it feels. You might feel a great sensation of stretch or you might not at all. That's okay, we're just checking in. You will also likely notice a big difference left to right depending on what your dominant arm is and the repetitive tasks that you go through during a day. So good, we've released our extensors a little bit. We're gonna add our bouncy ball in. Now, I have to hold my arm up so you can see it, but you do not. You could maybe rest it on a desk in front of you or even just have it laying down towards your side, but I'm gonna keep it out so you can see the demonstration. So I'm holding my bouncy ball in the palm of my other hand. I'm gonna come to this space just above the crease of the elbow, and we're just gonna do some little circles. I want to be pushing down a little bit, but not so much. I'm wincing if I find a tender spot or a soft spot. And I'm slowly, oh so slowly, making my way sort of forward and back and down this part of the arm with my circles. As you go, I want you to pay attention to the sensations as they come up. Sometimes we'll feel like a trigger point, which can feel like a intensity spike. So I want you to kind of notice that, because in a few minutes we will come back. But in the meantime, we're just rolling away slowly, like I said, moving front and back, working our way down, maybe a third of the way down the arm. Noticing the lumps and bumps as I kind of crunch over them. As we come down to the middle of the arm, our front and back movement's going to get much narrower because, like I said, moving out of that muscle belly, we're moving more into this muscle tendon. Coming all the way down to the back of the wrist. Be careful not to push on those big bumps of the ulna on the pinky side and the radius on the thumb side. And then with our bouncy ball, let's come up into the web of the thumb a few times, just rolling up and down. Poor little thumbs tend to get a little neglected. We've come up and down a few times. This time I want you to kind of come a little more up into the thumb pad, down to the wrist. Good. Now, coming back into the belly of our forearm. Were there any sort of muscle knots in there, spots that you felt, ooh, I have to pay attention? If so, we're going to find them and just gently put pressure down. If not, we're going to aim for, again, that muscle belly piece, that top third, just gently pushing it nice and static. I want my hand nice and loose, relaxed. Allowing that pressure to sink in slightly. Let's add a little bit of movement with my fingers. I'm going to slow motion point them down towards the ceiling. As you can tell by my face, that's going to intensify the sensation. So two things: move slowly, and you can reduce the amount of pressure you are pushing down into your arm. With your fingers pointing down, slowly move them back to neutral. And then lifting up, feeling those muscles contract. And then let it soften. Good. Release. Let's just do a couple big kind of circles through that whole area with the idea of flushing it out. And then take your bouncy ball, put it down for a moment, and let's just do some gentle, I'm just squeezing and pulling up on that skin, on that muscle. Just allowing some blood flow to come in, helping it to release. Good. So that's the extensors, or the back of our hands. Now we want to work on our flexors. So as you can see, my palm has changed. I'm face up now. Your flexors are responsible for flexing your fingers back towards your forearm, and they run from the top of your elbow and coming all the way down across to the outside of the thumb. So just like the extensors, they're coming across the bones of the arm, and we want to be careful about not pushing in. There's a little divot right beside your elbow here where the nerve runs, so if you ding that, it can feel a little electric, a little spicy, but we want to stay coming up and really gentle over the inside of the elbow. We're just starting some circles. And once I get past the crease of the elbow, I'm going to start this forward and backwards movement. I'm coming a little over halfway into the center of my arm, and I'm coming out just to the outside of the pinky side. And so you're going to come back and forth until you get about halfway through, and then we get a little more narrow as the muscles get narrow. So nice and slow, doing circles. And we are moving back and forth. Nice and slow, noticing those tension spots. Once you get to that top third of the hand, we're getting much more narrow. Being really careful about the amount of pressure that we put in the wrist. So this is very light, very surface touch. And then as we come into the hand, let's trace rolling up to the pinky, rolling back down to the ring finger, rolling back down to the middle finger, rolling back down, out to the index finger and back down. And then let's repeat those moving back out. So index first, back down. Middle, back down. Ring, back down, out to the pinky, and back down. Good. Put your bouncy ball in your lap. I'm realizing we didn't stretch this side. So because our flexors are engaging and doing this motion, to stretch them, we want to do the opposite. Because they cross the elbow joint, we need a nice straight elbow joint, and we're going to bring the backs of our fingers towards the back of our forearm and gently applying a bit of an overpressure. Now, I'm very double jointed, so you can see that I have more than 180 degrees. Most people's elbows are probably going to look a little more like this. But if you're like me and you're really seeing that elbow pop, you just want to be careful about, we don't want to fall into our joints. So just making sure if there's any complaining in the joint, achiness or tenderness, that you're backing off, especially if you're double jointed like me. We're letting that stretch happen. Good. As we release, let's come to do another pass from elbow down towards the wrist. This time we're just rolling the ball. So for this part, we want to be careful about avoiding the little pit of the elbow. So you're only going to do a small movement until you get below the elbow. And then we're coming across the whole inside of the forearm till you get to that lower third. And then it's quite smaller because you can even often see, if you scrunch your fingers up, you can see these little tendons. They're not very big. There's not a lot of meat happening in here that's beneficial to be pushing and rolling, and we want to be careful of the bones underneath. So starting at the elbow, really small to avoid that ditch of the elbow. We're just gently rolling forward and back. Once I get under the eye of the elbow, I can start that roll to come over my whole forearm. And I'm just slowly making my way down, maybe about halfway currently. And then as I come into that bottom third, looking at how small this movement gets, back and forth, till we find the base of the palm. And then let's work our way back up. So keeping it small and slow. And then as we start to come into more of the muscle belly, starting to get a little wider near the halfway point. Trying not to rush it. It can be tempting to go faster and faster and faster. And then of course avoiding the inside, that little ditch pit of the elbow, but wanting to do just a little bit near those attachment points. Good. Take a moment, try to think about, was there any kind of spicy spots in there? Let's revisit them. So for most of us, it will be in that top third again. Yours might have been closer to the elbow, or it just depends. It might be further towards the thumb side, right in the middle, closer to the pinky side. So find a spot, and then we're just gently applying that downward pressure. Trying to let everything else relax. Don't let your shoulders hike up. I find sometimes when I'm doing this thing, shoulders rise towards the ears. So just letting it all soften out. And then maybe bringing your fingertips towards the forearm, feeling that muscle shorten underneath. Releasing back to neutral, slowly, slowly. And then pulling those fingers behind you as those muscles lengthen underneath. Moving back to neutral, release. And then just do a little bit of gentle smooshing. Again, we are just grabbing that tissue and lifting up. It's not a huge movement because of course your skin's gonna keep everything intact. And then let's find maybe one more sensitive spot that you found, or just another part of the muscle belly, to gently compress into doing that trigger point work, allowing for a release. And then bringing a little bit of movement, fingers coming towards the forearm. Letting them release. Dropping fingers back. Want to keep the elbows straight for this to really get the stretch through the full range of motion. And release. Release your bouncy ball, bring it down to your lap. Do a little bit of squeezing. Good. Coming back. And that's one side. If you really have a sore arm, maybe you only needed one side to be done, but it can be really beneficial to do both sides. Like I said, we often notice big imbalances or differences from one side to the next. So feel free to restart the video and do it on the other side, at least a couple of times until you feel like you got the flow of it. Often when we're doing one side and the other, because we kind of know where we're going, we rush through it, and you really want to take the time to check in, to notice, to see what sensations are coming up. And if you do this and it's really feeling gnarly in there, it's definitely something that you want to bring up with your care team. Again, this is just an area of the body where we don't tend to notice it until we really get into it, or until it starts showing up in a way that impairs our function. So I hope that was helpful for you today. And please let me know if you have any questions, if you want to see more of this kind of content, and I hope to be moving and being mindful with you soon.